Well, good evening to everyone. It's evening here in Melbourne, and I'm about to begin another hour of world history. Now, tonight I'm going to lay out what I'm going to do in the next few weeks as well, because we have covered Egypt and now we're doing Sumer and Akkad. But I think we're getting to the level of the Bronze Age, so in other words, around 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. And I want to bring in the other side, the other parts of the world up to this time. After Sumer, I'm going to take a little break and I'm going to go to China, and then I'm going to go to India and maybe South America, North America, and the Vikings and Europe up to the Bronze Age. So we'll see, we're going to take a little bit of a turn, but tonight is important because we're going to meet Babylon. Babylon is not just a city, a legendary city, it's actually a city that existed in Sumer. And it was an important, Sumer and Akkad, it was an important city, it became an important city, and, because it made its way even into nursery rhymes. How many miles to Babylon? 70 miles and 10. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again. So that's the legend of Babylon in nursery rhymes. Well, this shows you that, Babylon was a marvellous legendary city that existed only in the land of dreams. But it didn't just exist, it actually existed. Well, thanks to historians and to archaeologists, excavators, all the people who dig up the past. Digging up the past is important because that's how we progress in life, in our world. And in the, not just understanding the present, but also propelling ourselves into the future. So it's important to understand that history has sort of two paces forward, one backwards, and you go sideways, and you do lots of different, history is who makes history. In other words, the people who in power, the people who have the writing, the people who have the knowledge and are willing to share this with others. Because when you write something, it remains. And we're very lucky now to be able to do through this Facebook Live, to be able for me to talk to you because, I've done television work for many years, radio, but honestly, the satisfaction I'm getting now by being able to control the content and, the hour as I please, basically. Okay, not many people come on, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that we are happy with what we're doing, and then let the future judge us for what we've done, basically, or ignore us altogether. So that's the one aspect that I wanted to mention today. The other one is, of course, we're doing also Australian history before the invasion and after, and Australian literature as well. And I will finish with my songs, with my 4 songs, in preparation for my Italian lesson on Tuesdays from 11:25 to 12:30. But all these hours that I do are available on my Facebook page because they're left there, and I still look at them to hear what I've actually, the promises I've made or what I've said and how I continue. So I look at what I've done in order to move forward with you. A pity that not many people actually, sort of come on and stir me up a bit, but it doesn't matter. I don't need many people to stir me up. I'll do that on my own. The last one, there are 4 songs that I'm going to to do the Italian lyrics of songs, and then on a Tuesday I actually go through some of the songs. I can't do, in order to explain the grammar in there, and you know, develop words, your word bank for Italian and other languages, which I will have to bring in, a bit like what I'm going to do now with the world history, and I'll do that with languages as well. Okay, so it's 7:30 and I'm happy to be able to start. So Babylon, how many miles to Babylon? 70 miles and 10. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again. Well, the old nursery rhyme shows that to Englishmen of only a few hundred years ago, Babylon was a marvellous legendary city that existed only in the land of the dreams. Okay, today, thanks to the patient work of excavators and historians, we know a good deal about this ancient city that did really exist. Okay, now thank you to also the publishers of history books. They helped me a lot so that I don't have to write everything up, although I can, but when you have the information there and I'm able to read it and talk about it, it's good. So, what happens in the 23rd century before Christ? A new tribe of half-barbarous Semitic people began edging into the kingdom of Sumer and Akkad from the north. Semitic people. I think they are the ones from the desert. I'm not quite sure. We'll have to check this one here. Semitic, what does it mean? What does that actually mean? Okay, so began edging into the north, just as the Akkadians themselves had done earlier, 500 years earlier. The Akkadians had invaded Sumer and then they became the rulers, of course. Now this time here, the Semitic people came from the outside, worked their way in, and by 2200 BC, before Christ, they actually had conquered the twin, all the lands between the two rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris. So soon after 2200 BC, they conquered an unimportant village on the Euphrates. Its name was Babylon. So Babylon actually existed. Hammurapi, king of Babylonia. Hammurapi. We're going to hear a lot about this one here because he's an important king. Kings, once upon a time, they were like generals. They had their armies. That's why they became powerful, because they had control. They were able to control their armies, and they had to do what they say. They were pretty rough people, I can tell you. Hammurapi, king of Babylonia. After about 100 years of warfare, 100 years, think about it. We complain about 20 years. It's 100 years of warfare here. There arose a great king of Babylon named Hammurapi, who made himself masters of the whole of the land of the twin rivers. The Babylonians took over and spread the civilization of Sumer and Akkad. And though they did not add to it very much of their own, they spread cuneiform writing and Sumerian trade and business customs among neighbouring peoples as far away as the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Now, this book here does not mention that these people here also went towards India and China. So it just shows you that when people write books, they select, they're very selective about what they want to say and who they want to push. But really, my argument is going to be that trade between nations actually cause a lot of progress, and sometimes you go into places that you don't think much of, and then the consequences of your going there become very much important in historical terms. So let's have a look now. Our measurements of angles and time taken from the Babylonians. So that was Hammurapi. Now we go to measurements of angles. The ancient Sumerian priests had calculated, not quite correctly as we now know, that there were 360 by 6 days in the year. So even then, 2,200 years before the birth of Christ, look at this. These people already had counted how many days there was in a year. 360, then we got to 365, and now we've got 365 and a quarter. From the starting point, they used 60 and factors and multiples of 60 as the basic numbers in their mathematics as we used them. Thus they divided as we used 10. Oh, I see. They used 60 as we used 10. You know, the British also used 12. But now the metric system seems to be the one that's most accepted in the world, is actually multiples of 10. Thus, they divided the circle into 360 degrees, the year into 12 months, wow, the day into 24 hours, the hour into 60 minutes, and the minutes into 60 seconds. Incredible. I've been saying earlier on in Egypt, by mentioning Rome, that there were 10 months. Here they got 12. So was I wrong? I'm not sure. But what I know is that there was a great civilization here. If they could do that, that means they were very advanced in knowledge. You remember this, that 60 shekels made a mina. Shekels, that's another coin, money, shekels, or weight. It's a weight. The Babylonians took over these units of measures from the Sumerians and spread them among other people. So by trade, they had to use, some sort of form in order to get paid and pay. So beginning of the Bronze Age. So this is the beginning of we live in the Old Stone Age and we start the Bronze Age. In Hammurabi's Babylon, copper had given way to bronze and clay discs to oblong writing tablets. Letters were made in the following manner. So they were the cuneiform writing, which I showed last week. And then it's like an alphabet, but in angle forms. Clay letters and envelopes. After the scribe had impressed the sign on his tablet, he sprinkled it with dry powdered clay to prevent the envelope of wet clay, which he then wrapped around the original tablet from sticking to it. He then wrote the address on the envelope and sent the whole to be baked in a kiln. The person to whom the letter was addressed broke the envelope with a sharp blow in order to read the private letter inside. Look at this. Unbelievable. 2,200 years ago. Unbelievable. 4,000 years ago. Hammurabi's letters. Some of Hammurabi's own letters to the governors of various districts or provinces have been dug up. They are almost as well preserved as when they were written and tell us much about the life of the Babylonians. Now, I've heard of cuneiform writing for quite a long time, and people have been able to decipher the actual meaning of cuneiform writing. Once you decipher the letters, then it's like normal reading. Irrigation and trade. The king's officers had to care for a large system of irrigation, canals, and collect taxes from farmers in their provinces. Donkey caravans carried Babylonian goods far and wide, and river boats brought timber and metal downstream for building and industry. So here we are, plain, a flat terrain, very fertile, with desert on one side, and you've got the mountains on the other, and rivers coming down. So, organisation, canals, farmers working, they had to pay tax, otherwise who pays for it? So in other words, civilization, that's how it developed. And as a result of that, of course, people will build more permanent homes. But we don't have stones here, we have mud. Let's not forget, the main construction material in Sumer and Akkad was mud. Houses were of a kind still common in the Middle East today. They were made of mud bricks, fitted together while they were still damp so that they dried in the sun into a solid mass. They were of one story with a flat roof, and apart from one or two entrances, all the doors of the rooms opened into a central courtyard, often planted with lawns and trees where the family might relax in the cool of the evening. Not long ago, about a year or two ago, I was watching some television of Cairo, and I was surprised to see that some people lived on top of houses, and they actually, it's like another lot of little piazzas on top of houses, and people use them to live on them, to actually have gardens, to have, it's incredible. And I haven't seen it personally, and I'm very interested to see, even, I don't know, maybe on one of the networks, something to do with the top of houses in the Middle East. Because they're flat. They're not like in Switzerland, where you have to have the snow dropping down. You've got a flat roof, not much rain. So these are a lot of possibilities there. Okay. And buildings. Only temples, public buildings, and the houses of the very rich were sometimes faced with glazed, kin-baked bricks. So they made them pretty. Because stone and wood were scarce and had to be imported, most houses had curtains instead of doors. Fair enough. The arch. Now that's an important construction device. You can see that in the art of building, the Babylonians were far behind the Egyptians. Well, because they had stone Egyptians. The Sumerians didn't. Now, were they in contact with each other? Of course they were. Must have been, with all the trade, people, the human spirit, the fact of going from one place to another. Fantastic stuff. In some of their temples, the arch appears for the first time in history. So, let's go back. Babylonians were far behind the Egyptians, but they did make one important discovery. In some of their temples, the arch appears for the first time in history. So, the Babylonians then were the creators of the arch. Well, interesting. And of course, further on, when we do the Greeks and the Romans, the arch becomes very elaborate, and even more so in the Middle Ages. Long time from here, and we're doing world history here, around the world. It's going to take a long time. Going to have a lot of fun myself, because I'm learning as I go along. Marduk and Ishtar. We may be sure that two of the greatest temples in Babylon were those of Marduk and Marduk, the chief Babylonian god, and Ishtar, the goddess of love. So Marduk was the chief god of the Sumerians, and Ishtar was the goddess of love. Well, without love, there's no humanity. Who was later worshipped as Aphrodite in Greece, goddess of love. And then we got Venus, etc. By the Greeks, and as Venus by the Romans. So Aphrodite, Venus, Ishtar, there's a connection there. As in Egypt, the priests of the temples often became very rich. Priests, incredible. They're supposed to have nothing. From trade and from the produce of the vast temple farms, which were worked like those of private farms by large numbers of slaves. Where did you get the slaves from? From your neighbours. You went there, you killed whoever was strong, and made the rest slaves. Women and children, older people, but the young ones, they either joined the army there as, war fodder, or they were killed. Okay, let's have a look now. Obelisk of Hammurabi. The most important find made by the excavators of Hammurabi's Babylon was the great stone obelisk illustrated. Well, there is a picture here, but I didn't take a picture. I might do that later on. I'll go through some of these histories with pictures as well, you know, in another program. For now, just remember, an obelisk is an obelisk. It is about 8 feet high and shows the king receiving his code of laws from the sun god himself. A bit like Moses, you know, going on the mountains, coming back with his tablets, and God gave it to him. So this happened a couple of thousand years earlier. We learn from each other, don't we? The lower portion of the obelisk is covered with thousands of lines of cuneiform signs giving the laws which were enforced by the king's judges throughout Babylonia. So the laws of the kings written down become the laws that are enforced. And if you don't agree, see what happens. And the magistrates, the judges were important people, of course, and they're all loyal to the emperor, the king. The head priest, one and the same. All the surviving legal code. Together they made up the oldest complete code of law of which we have any knowledge. So the first code that we know of is that of Hammurabi's, of Babylonia. Incredible. That's, you know, I actually have found the other day, I found a book of wise sayings from ancient Egypt. Very interesting to even read some of them. Severe but just. So what were these laws like? Severe. So in other words, you know, harsh. Perhaps you remember that the Hebrew laws given in the Old Testament are based on the principle of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, the Old Testament here, these people here came before the Hebrews, way before. One of Hammurabi's laws reads, if a man has made the tooth of another to fall out, one of his own teeth shall be knocked out. So one tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, an ear for an ear, a nose for a nose. That's the idea. The Hebrews, of course, were Semitic people like the Babylonians. They came from the desert, but also from the, I don't know, I have to check it out. Generally speaking, Hammurabi's code is severe but just, and it makes the punishment fit the crime. We still use the term, the punishment must fit the crime. By 1750 before Christ, the power and influence of Babylonian civilization had been practically destroyed. So within not even 500 years. And it's the cycles. But let's not forget here, I'm going to, 750 BC, I'm going to go, after this chapter here, I'm going to go to China and have a look what was happening there up to 1750 BC, from the Stone Age to there, because they've got a long history as well. And then there's also another long history in India. But, then you can connect India, China, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. You've got a whole landmass. So when we look at Chinese history, it tells us really that they are more interested in going across the land than by sea. So Keating had a point. But you never know. They also had very strong naval forces in the past. So who knows? Everything is possible. Babylon itself was plundered by the Hittites. The Hittites are the people from Turkey. A civilized people from Asia Minor. Asia Minor is current Turkey. And after they had gone to the whole country was conquered by the Kassites. Kassites are barbarous people from the mountains to the north and west. So, so the people from the north, from the mountains, tough people, huh? And guess what? They're going to bring their horses down. Later we shall learn how a second Babylon arose after 1,000 years on the ashes of the old. Meanwhile, we must notice something about the Kassites, which is far more important than the fact that they overthrew Babylon. And let's not forget that Babylon was built in between the rivers at the edge of the Euphrates. And so, some of these places, even though they get destroyed by events like wars, etc., then they get rebuilt again. So do you remember reading that the horse was unknown in Egypt until about 1500 BC? Oh, I don't remember that. Do you? We didn't know about horses in Egypt, but we knew about the chariots in Egypt. So were they led by donkeys or cows? No. So horses came later. So the Sumerians, Akkadians and Babylonians too used oxen and donkeys as draft animals. The horse is not unknown, was very rare, as is shown by its Babylonian name, the donkey from the mountains. So the name horse used to be the donkey from the mountains. However, after the Kassite invasion, horses became common and replaced the donkey for most purposes, especially for pulling chariots in war and later on for riding. So it seems that the wild Kassite invaders were able to teach something worthwhile to their more civilized enemies. That's actually the end of the chapter on Sumer and Akkad, and we also saw the Kassites, and before them Hammurabi's Babylonians. But basically, what we learned so far of the two civilizations, they both made progress in different ways, but progress they made. And one of what came out of it was the word expansion. When you become powerful and you have control over your territory, then you want to expand. A bit, China's saying we want Hong Kong, this Taiwan. So in other words, it's this expansion thing. Just like the Americans too, they've gone all over the world. And so the Chinese, the Russians have been kept under control for various reasons. And one of them was because they withdrew from Afghanistan, they withdrew from Eastern Europe, with the fall in 1989. Look, civilizations come and go. Things change. Politicians, the rulers, whether it's a king, an emperor, a president, a tsar, a dictator, it's all temporary, honestly. And, when there are wars, people get sick of it and they want peace. When they've got peace and they've got good trade, then they want more. So one has to learn in history that to remain reasonably humble when you're powerful. So in other words, looking after the weaker sections, you improve the whole lot. You lift humanity. You don't downplay it. And you have to lift the weaker spots. So in a sports, you have to look after those people who need you. So in Australia, it's no good creating a pyramid where a lot of people are really rich and people are poor. It's better to lift them up. And people have learned now in government was very happy to see that with this pandemic, money was spent, was given directly to small business to survive, to remain where they were. Otherwise, they would have to close. And the people who owned then the properties, people renting, etc., those people would, so there's chaos if you don't help the population. And the same as we help the population within the nation, you have to think of trade. So your neighbours need to be in the same position. No good everyone having a television set here and nothing, let's say, in neighbouring countries or in the islands. We finally realised that the islands in the Pacific need a bit of a hand. And, Southeast Asia up to now, but they're all the world is coming closer together because of the pandemic and because one realises that that the problems are common. But the common enemy is not other humans, it's the actual nature of our Earth. Our Earth could be, destroyed by a meteorite. That's the idea. We're now trying to offset these meteorites if they come close to Earth. The point that has to be made is that all our armies should be armies of peace, not of war. But if then you get bully leaders who want more, who want to control, enjoy the power trip, the personal power trip, that becomes a problem. So I don't know what the answer is. Honestly, I do not. My wish is for peace, and by doing this history here, you see over hundreds of years that things changed dramatically. Cities that were very important, like Babylon, get destroyed totally. Jerusalem got destroyed. Rome destroyed Carthage, razed it to the ground and put salt over it. Those are the legends. So this part of history is important. Do you stop because Tom Padula stops saying it here? No. Look up your history. Just take it on. Take it on. Look up Egypt again. Look up Sumer and Akkad, Babylonia. Look them up. Enjoy the historical journey. Good fun. Good fun. And also, I'm looking at, I even got a Netflix. I'm going to get a new TV soon so that I can have Netflix or whatever to watch some of the historical films that have been produced. And together with that, together with what we have on the internet, on Professor Google and Chrome and other social networks, you can really become quite a master yourself. And rather than read books like me, you can learn it and tell them stories. So that's how we are. That's almost 8 o'clock, so that's why I spoke a little bit more, because I have in front of me, and I didn't have it last time, I had the time. Time was important. So that's where we are. We finished with Sumer and Egypt. Well, this is my 11th, the 11th lesson that I've given, and I'm suggesting to people who haven't come on to me during this time to actually go from the beginning and see what I say along the way and enjoy all my mistakes. Well, that's the truth. Now, I'm going to go to Australian history, because Australian history is what we need as well. We need to know about before the invasion, because we're still being invaded by all these people coming from overseas. But we then send our people overseas to invade other lands. So That's it. Now, last time we were talking about shelters and clothing by the indigenous people, including all over Australia. So in Tasmania, where the winters were even colder, quite substantial shelters were built. So the colder you are, the more the indigenous people need to protect themselves from the elements. So in Tasmania, the indigenous people, the Aborigines there, built stronger huts. Some of these were in the form of a strong lean-to made of tree branches placed in a semicircle, fastened together and supported with stakes. They had their backs to the wind and a fire was lit in front. Another type was a full circular dome that could have a diameter of 4 metres and a height of 2 metres. Now, I'm assuming that the people who wrote this book here knew something about all this because, you know, being of indigenous background, their elders could have told them this is what happened. But I know that by 1860, 80 years after the so-called invasion, or 70 years, the last full-blooded Aboriginal Tasmanian was called Truganini, the last one. By that time, they had been eliminated, or sickness had taken them, or they had gone with the white people, and therefore the full-blooded we're talking about. By 1860, incredible. In 80, must have been very rough times. So let's have a look. This was made by bending, so the houses then, how do we know all this? By word of mouth, I suppose. This was made by bending strong branches and pushing both ends into the ground. Or the people who went to Tasmania actually wrote this. They did the writing. We noticed this and that. These were set in a circle until they were enough to support a covering of lighter branches and leaves. In cold weather, the Tasmanian wore fur cloaks. Fur cloaks, where did they get them from? In northern, well, I suppose from the animals. In northern Australia, huts were built for protection against the heavy rain of the wet season. In Arnhem Land and Cape York, the usual hut was rectangular with 4 forked corner posts on which a platform was built 1 metre or 2 off the ground of saplings and paper bark. A family could either sleep on the ground with this platform as a shelter or sleep on the platform with a fire on the ground underneath. And don't forget, in the north we've got also snakes, you've got a lot of animals, tropical weather, you know, spiders, you name it. So it's sort of, the buildings have to take account of what is in the area, what is dangerous in the area. So, or sleep on the platform with a fire to keep away the mosquitoes. Mosquitoes again in the north. No clothes were worn in this warm climate. Only decorations such as hairstring belts and necklaces of bright berries or shells. Special armbands were worn as a sign of mourning in Arnhem Land and on Bathurst and Melville Islands. So that's before the invasion. That was shelter. You can look up the shelters, and I saw something at the gallery not so long ago, one of the Aboriginal shelters there at the back. I'm not sure it's still there, but anyway. Now, from that we have to look at water and food. Water in Australia is very important. So when it rains, well, when it rains too much, it's too much. But if it doesn't rain where it's supposed to rain, we're in trouble. Australia is a dry country. Not quite. Even now, Australians are always aware of the importance of rainfall. In the southeast and southwest, where most of the white people live today, droughts happen quite often, and it is much drier in the arid inland. But sometimes there is too much rain and cities and farmlands are flooded. Floods happen every year in many parts of the tropical north. According to the differences in rainfall and in temperature, different plants and animals grow and thrive. Over the centuries, the Aborigines learned the best ways to survive in the various kinds of climate and landscape. They knew where and how to find water, food, plants and animals at the right season. Wow, take this with a grain of salt. They knew. How come in Australia we didn't have 50 million people or 20 million people, not even 1 million people over the whole continent? So in other words, you know, we're talking about nomadic people here and Paleolithic, Neolithic people. It's in that sort of situation. They're quite happy. People are quite happy regardless of whether they are in the Paleolithic, Neolithic, or Bronze or Iron Age. Whatever age you're in, you can be happy or you can be unhappy. When there are too many controls, people are unhappy. And when they're pretty free and they got plenty of food and they're nice to each other, that's when things are good. Now, that's enough for before the invasion, because I said last time that I would do the Men from Snowy River, right? Now I'm going to do something that I haven't done in all these 11 lessons. I'm going to take my hat off because my son gave me this hat here. And he also gave me this book about 12 years ago. And I'm going to read you The Man from Snowy River. Dedicated to you, Jason. So he says here, Dear Dad, Merry Christmas 2008. Wishing you all of our love and warm wishes at this special time of the year. We hope you get a lot of enjoyment out of reading the classic poetry of Australia's second favourite poet. Lots of love always, Jason. So there you are, second poet. Maybe he was talking about me being the first one. The Man from Snowy River. I read the first part last time. I'm going to read the second part. The last part finished off with, he learned to ride while driving on the plains. And we're talking about Clancy of the Overflow. Okay? And one was there, a stripling on a small and weedy beast. He was something like a racehorse undersized. We're talking about the horses here. With a touch of Timo pony, 3 parts thoroughbred at least, and such as are by mountain horsemen prized. He was hard and tough and wiry, just the sort that won't say die. There was a courage in his quick, impatient tread, and he bore the badge of gameness in his bright and fiery eye, and the proud and lofty carriage of his head. These are the Brumbies. But still so slight and weedy, one would doubt his power to stay. And the old man said, that horse will never do for a long and tiring gallop. Lad, you'd better stop away. Those hills are far too rough for such as you. So he waited sad and wistful. Only Clancy stood his friend. I think we ought to let him come, he said. I warrant he'll be with us when he's wanted at the end, for both his horse and he are mountain bred. He hails from Snowy River, up by Kosciuszko's side, where the hills are twice as steep and twice as rough, where our horses' hoofs strike firelight from the flint stones every stride. The man that holds his own is good enough, and the Snowy River riders on the mountains make their home, where the river runs those giant hills between. I have seen full many horsemen since I first commenced to roam, but nowhere yet such a horseman have I seen. Wow. The Brumby is being ridden by very, very tough horsemen. Wonderful. This is the second part. There are two more parts. Two more parts. Did I say two more? I said I was going to read it up to here. So I have to stick to my plan. Yep, that's it. That's it for now, because now I have to do, I continue. I'm not going to stop here for the Australian one. I'm going to go to what I do with Italian lyrics. You know what I'm doing now, don't you? I am accessing me. Oh no, not again. Every time. I don't know, Tom. Technology. Here we are. I've got it. See? Happiness. Now, should I take my hat off? Yes, I have to take my hat off. Sorry, Jason. That's it. Because this is Australia now. There we are. The Akruba hat. All right. Now, we're going to do 4 songs today. And these songs I will analyse in grammatical form on Tuesdays, as I said, from 11:25 to 12:30. And these lessons are there for you to look at. Now, let's have a look. I will start off with this one here. Un'ora sola ti vorrei, okay? These are the words, and you can look them up. The next one is come bella fa l'amore quando è sera. The next one, la domenica andando alla messa. The next one, mamma. So, depending on the time, here is Dora, so I got to go the other way. We did some rehearsals this afternoon for the Sunday program. Very nice. On Sunday it'll be Christmas. We'll celebrate Christmas in the Dante Alighieri hour, and I'll be doing Canto 14 with explanation in English. Now, thank you very much to Dominic Petras and Anna Cavedon for watching. I'm very pleased that you're on. I'm happy that you are. Let me see now. Where do I start? I think I can't remember which one is which, but let me have a look at this one. I've done this song here before, Un'ora sola ti vorrei. But I want to sing it on my own so that I can use these then for my Italian class on a Tuesday. And here we go. This is how it goes. Un'ora sola ti vorrei. And this was sung by Fedora Mingarelli 1938. C'è nel mio cuore quando mi guardi tu un desiderio che non mi lascia più. Freme la vita mia vicino a te, mi scordo il mondo e tu lo sai perché. Un'ora sola ti vorrei, io che non so scordarti mai, per dirti ancora coi baci miei, che cosa sei per me. Un'ora sola ti vorrei, per dirti quello che non sai, ed in quest'ora donerei la vita mia per te. Solo in quest'ora vive un'eternità, fammi sognar e tutto dimenticar. Dammi l'incanto che non ebbe ancora, il desiderio che tormenta il cuore. un'ora sola ti vorrei, io che non so scordarti mai, per dirti ancora coi baci miei che cosa sei per me. Un'ora sola ti vorrei, per dirti quello che non sai, ed in quest'ora donerei la vita mia per te. As you can see, by not having the music, what happens is that you can actually learn the lyrics of the song. Now, of course, when there is music, well, music, as I said, is mathematics. It's very precise. You can't, if you can't follow it, they get upset. So I thought, you know what, Tom, the lyrics are important because the musicians don't actually think of the lyrics. The words are secondary. If you go to opera, a lot of the operas is just the music. Slowly but surely, the composers and the musicians, they did away with the librettisti. Even though the storyline is very important, but I had rehearsals with musicians for many years, and over time, you can't sing, you can't do this. And all it was is that I haven't done music. Therefore, by not doing music, you don't have I'm a free spirit in many ways, and I don't like following rules. Would you believe that? But as a teacher, you have to follow rules. Like now, governments want us to follow what they say. So do you have a bit of compassion in your heart for those people, understanding of those people who don't think along the same way as you do? It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. But on this one here is, now, there's another, this one here is, I think it's, let's have a look. Let's listen to it first and then I'll comment. This is a song by Giuliola Cinquetti, and, singing, si canta con gli amici, La domenica andando alla messa. Well, it would be nice. It's nice when one goes to church on a Sunday. But this one here was from a while back. Okay, so this is how it was. La domenica andando alla messa, accompagnata dai miei amatori, mi sorpresero i miei genitori, monachella mi fecero andar, oi sì sì, oi no no. Monachella mi fecero andar. Dimmi che mami, sono innocente come il sol che risplende sul mare. Voglio dare un addio all'amor. Oi sì sì, oi no no, oi sì sì, oi no no. Voglio dare un addio all'amor. Giovanotti, piangete, piangete, han tagliato i miei biondi capelli. Tu lo sai, eran ricci, eran belli. Giovanotti, piangete con me. Oh sì sì, oh no no. Oh sì sì, oh no no. Giovanotti, piangete con me. Dimmi che mami, sono innocente come il sol che risplende sul mare. Voglio dare un addio all'amor, oh sì sì, oh no no. Voglio dare un addio all'amor, oh sì sì, oh no no. Voglio dare un addio all'amor. Well, that one there, that wasn't the one that I wanted to talk about. It was another one. I don't know. Oh, I see. I jumped one. That was Gigliola Cinquetti, La Domenica Andando alla Messa. Very good, singing in a class because the words are quite easy, etc. But what I really wanted to talk about was the idea that Italian is a constructed language, and that, we talk about, the Italians always say dialects here, dialects there. It's like a put down. Dialects when you say dialect, it's like putting down the local language. Local languages are important, and they should be backed. It's taken me many, many decades to come around to this idea, but it's now becoming more obvious that people are respecting the local languages. Whatever language you have at home, it should be respected. Then you should find excuses for speaking it the way you do. Why not? It's your language. But let's not forget, l'italiano è una lingua costruita con la grammatica. So this one here is from Rome. I think this is the one. Let me see. Yes, let's see. Come bello fa l'amore quando è sera. This song here, Come bello fa l'amore quando è sera, has got that Roman feeling about it. It's a song that comes out of Rome. So here we go. A bit of the local language involved in it as well. Come bello fa l'amore quando è sera. Chi per fa l'amore vuol salotto e severe, chi se sceglie l'ombra profumata d'un caffè. Mentre c'ho da dite, a me mi piace amoreggiare per le strade in libertà. Quando poi tramonta il sole, so più dolci le parole, a tu per tu. Com'è bello fa l'amore quando è sera, core a core con una pupa che è sincera, quelle stelle che ci guardano lassù non so belle come l'occhi che c'hai tu. Luce bianca, dormi veglia d'un lampione che ti insegna dove tu te puoi baciare, specialmente fra le rose a primavera. Come bello fa l'amore quando è sera. Spersa nell'erbetta fra le rose e le panze, io c'ho una casetta che mi fabbrico da me. C'ha per tetto il cielo, c'ha la luna pava giù, per tramonto è tutta blu. Non ci pago mai pigione e ci porto ogni maschietta che mi va. E se un vigile mi chiede, lei che fa? Io rispondo, è casa mia che non lo sa. L'ho innarzata con i sogni sta casetta, e se qui la pupa mia mi viene trovare, specialmente fra le rose a primavera. Come bello fa l'amore quando è sera. Beautiful song, honestly. Yes, and I noticed Bart is here. Are you singing, Bart? Local language in my Italian class on Tuesdays from 11:25 to 12:30. Okay. Well, that discussion there about the dialects, languages, needs to be had, because if you think of Italy and you think of all the variety of local languages, then if we treat them with respect, actually have a very enriched situation linguistically, but then you need to have commonality between, the south of Italy, centre, and the north. And that was the problem with unification, that people actually spoke local languages and the others from other parts of Italy didn't understand each other. So that has been a fight over the years. So this, you move towards the language, and then you sort of worry about what have we lost here. So you need to sort of balance the two. The same happened in Dante's times. The Italian language actually developed way before Dante wrote his Divine Comedy. It started off really because Latin was the main language of trade, of everything, but the people themselves began to not use the declensions properly. So Latin became, I don't want to use the word bastardized, but that's what happened, was that it became vulgar. In other words, people began to express themselves in a different way. So give it a couple hundred years, and then you get some people who say, oh, well, I'm going to write whatever I think in the language that I use. And that's what they did in the Scuola Siciliana under Frederick II. And that was a precursor to what Dante did, Dante's major work. You can't disclaim, but there were other examples of Italian language in Italy before that, coming from the Provençal, from southern France as well. So that's where we're at. We've got one more song here that I have, and this one, is one that, Mum, but I'm using these songs in order to teach the grammar. As I said in the lessons, la pratica batte la grammatica, ma senza la grammatica non puoi migliorare o perfezionare la lingua che vuoi imparare. So in other words, the grammar is actually the structure on which languages are built. So it doesn't matter if it's Italian or French or Chinese or Turkish. I am surrounded by 20 languages, and I've looked at them, and I say, what is the commonality here? It's the grammar. But grammar is boring, and it's technical. Quindi la pratica, somebody who does practice, speaks the language, they, don't need the grammar because they're using it. But if you're learning it as a second language, well, then it's different. Here we go, mamma. We're approaching the time now. I've sung this song many times, Mamma, and it's time now to bring it to the students of Italian who follow my lessons, and I urge everyone to start from the beginning. I was listening to my own lessons 1 and 2 on Insegna.com in the blog, and also now as well on TomPadulaTV.blogspot.com. You'll find them there as well. Okay? So here we go. Mamma. Mamma, son tanto felice perché ritorno da te. La mia canzone ti dice che è il più bel sogno per me. Mamma, son tanto felice viver lontano perché, mamma, solo per te la mia canzone vola. Mamma, sarai con me, tu non sarai più sola. Quanto ti voglio bene, queste parole d'amore che ti sospira il mio cuore, forse non si usano più. Mamma, ma la canzone mia più bella sei tu la vita, e per la vita non ti lascio mai più. Sento la mano tua stanca, cerca i miei riccioli d'or, sento e la voce ti manca, la ninna nanna d'allor. Oggi la testa tua bianca, io voglio stringere al cuore, solo per te la mia canzone vola, mamma, sarai con me, tu non sarai più sola, quanto ti voglio bene, queste parole d'amore che ti sospira il mio cuore, forse non s'usano più, mamma, ma la canzone mia più bella sei tu la vita, e per la vita non ti lascio mai più. Mamma, mai più. Well, that's we're finishing off with that. Well, thank you very much to Dominicana and Bart for sharing these moments here. This particular program now gets put on my Facebook page and is available from now on. I don't repeat a lot of every lesson is new, basically, and then I actually listen to them sometimes myself to see how I went. Do the same too. There's a lot to learn about yourself when you expose yourself to the public. Okay, ciao, buona serata, buongiorno, ovunque you are in the world. Until next Thursday, same time, same place. Ciao, ciao. Buonanotte. Okay? TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers.